Hi everybody, welcome to GTCoding. In this video, I'll show you how to create this translator app using React.js and OpenAI. So this is how the app looks, and here we have this text area and we can add a text over here. So I'll just type, how are you? And here I have selected Hindi, and let's click on translate. And here we can see that the translation of this text is displayed over here in Hindi. Now here you can just click on this copy button, and here we have this notification, and we can go ahead and copy and paste it anywhere we want. And in the same way, if we select another language, so if I select Spanish and if I click on translate, here we can see that we have the translation of how are you in Spanish. And in the same way, we also have Japanese. So here we can see we have the Japanese translation. So this is how this app is gonna work. And we're gonna create this using the OpenAI API. So let's get started. Now we're going to use Vite to create the React app. So you can just go over here to vitejs.dev and click on get started. And if you scroll down, you will have the command. So here we have the command for npm. So you can just copy this command from here. Right, so here I have created this folder called tutorials, and I just opened it with VS Code. Now let's go ahead and open the terminal. So I'll just click on view and let's click on terminal. And here let's paste the command and let's press enter. And here we need to give the project name. So I'll just name it translation. And let's press enter. And let's select React and JavaScript. Right now we can see that this folder has been created. Let's go into the folder. So let's type cd translation. And we need to type npm install. And now if you open this folder, we can see that all the files and folders for the React app are displayed over here. Now if you just type npm run dev and press enter, and if I click on this link, I'll just press command and click. And now we can see this is our React app. Right now let's go ahead and design the UI. So let's go back and let's go to the index.html file. And here first of all, let's change the title to translation app. And now we can see that the title has changed. Now let's go into the source folder and let's go to app.css and let's delete all the CSS from here. And let's also go to index.css and we'll delete all the CSS from here as well. And now let's go to app.jsx and let's delete all of this from here, and I'll just use a snippet called ES7 plus React Redux React Native snippet. So you can just search for this over here in the extensions and just install it. And once you install it, you can just type RAFCE and press tab. And here we can see that our basic boilerplate code has been written. Right now if you save this and if I go back to our web page, here we can see that app is displayed. Right now let's go back and let's start by creating a container division. So this is going to be the container division. And here let's give it a class name of container. And in that we need to create an h1. So for the h1, I'll just type translation. And here we can see we have this h1. Now let's create a form. Now for the form, we don't need to have any action. And in this form, we need to have 3 radio buttons. So for that, let's create a container division and let's give it a class of choices. And let's type input and let's give it a type of radio. The first radio button is for the Hindi language. So let's type ID equals Hindi. And we also need to have a label. So let's create a label. And the label is for this ID. So let's type Hindi over here as well. And here in the label, let's type Hindi. Now if you go back, here we can see we have this radio button with this label. Now let's go ahead and let's copy this. And let's paste it down here 2 more times. And the next language is going to be Spanish. And let's type Spanish over here. And here also let's type Spanish. And the next one was Japanese. So let's type Japanese. And here also let's type Japanese. Now if you go back, here we can see we have these 3 radio buttons. And right now all these 3 can be selected simultaneously. So for that, let's go back, and here for the input fields, we need to add an attribute called name. So let's type name, and let's set the name to language. You can name this anything you want. Let's copy this same name from here and let's paste it into all the other input fields. Now if we go back, we can select just one of these radio buttons at a time. Right now the next thing we need to do is create a text area. So let's go outside this division and let's create a text area, and I'll just add the name as message, and let's remove all of this, and let's add a placeholder, and here let's type your message here. And now if we go back, here we can see we have this text area. Alright, next we need to have the translate button. So here after this text area, let's create a button, and for the button let's set the type to submit, and for the value let's type translate. And now if we go back, here we can see we have this button translate. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create a division for the translated text. So for that, let's go outside this form and let's create a division with the class of translation, and here we need to have the translated text, and we also need to have a copy button. So inside this translation division, let's create a division with the class name of copy btn, and here we will add the copy icon. Now for this we will use heroicons.com. So here I'm in heroicons.com, and let's search for copy, and let's copy this icon. So I'll just copy the JSX from here, and let's go back and paste it over here, and now we can see we have the copy button, and we also have the translated text. Now we also need to create a division for the notification. Let's go outside this division and let's create a division with the class name of notification, and here let's type copied to clipboard, and here we have the notification. Alright, now let's go ahead and start styling this. So here let's import the app.css file. So I'll just type import app.css, and let's see whether it is working. So let's go back and let's select everything and let's type color red, and we can see that all the text color has changed to red. So we know that it is working alright. So let's go back and delete this. Now here let's set the font family to Inter and sans serif, and let's set the box sizing to border box, and now we can see that the font has changed. Right now let's go back and let's target the body, and for the body I'll just remove all the default margin, and let's set a background color of FEFAE0. Right now let's select this H1. So let's tap H1, and let's set the margin top to 0, and let's set the color of the text to 023047, and for the H1 let's set the font family to Poppins and sans serif, and this is how the heading looks right now. Now before styling anything else, let's style this copy button, and I'll just set the width as of now. So for that we have this division with the class of copy btn. So let's type translation copy btn, and I'll just set the width to 20 pixels. Right now let's continue styling the other elements. So let's style this container division. So let's type container, and we'll set the max width of the container to 600 pixels, and we'll bring it to the center. So I'll just type margin 32 pixels top and bottom, and auto for left and right, and let's also add a background color of white, and we'll also set a padding of 16 pixels top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right, and let's also add a box shadow. So I'll just type box shadow, and let's set the values to 0, 4 pixels, 40 pixels, negative 8 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0 and 0.2. Right now let's style the form. So we have the form inside the container division. So let's type container form, and let's set the display to flex, and I will set the flex direction to column, And now we can see all these elements have full width, and let's also add some gap. So let's type gap and let's set the gap to 16 pixels. Right now let's style these labels. So let's type container form label, and for the label let's type background, and let's set the background color of the label to A2 D2 FF, and let's set the color of the label to 023047. Right now let's set the height and the width. So let's type height and let's set the height to 40 pixels, and let's set the width of the element to 100 pixels. And here we can see that the height and the width are not being added. That's because labels are basically inline elements. So we have to change it to something else. So I'll just change this to display of flex. And now we can see that the height and the width are being added. Now we need to position all of these one next to the other. So let's go back and let's go to the app.jsx file. And here we can see we have this container division with the class of choices. So let's target that. Here I'll just type container choices and let's set the display to flex. And now we can see that all these elements are one next to the other. Let's also add some gap. So I'll just type gap and let's set the gap to 20 pixels, and I think that looks alright. Now I'll just go ahead and hide these radio buttons from here. We'll just display the labels, because even if you click on the label, the radio button is selected. That's because we added the for attribute over here. So we can directly go ahead and hide these radio buttons from here. So let's go back and let's type container form input of type radio, and let's set the display to none. And now we can see we just have the labels displayed. Right now let's go back to styling the labels, and here let's type border radius and let's set it to 30 pixels. So this will give us these rounded corners. And we'll also bring the text to the center. So let's type align items to the center and justify content to the center. Right now, whenever one of these labels is selected, we need to change the styling a little bit. And let's also change the cursor to pointer, so that when we hover over this, we have the pointer. So let's type cursor pointer. Right now, let's add the styling for the selected choice. So let's type container form input of type radio, and here we need to type colon checked. So this will give us the selected radio button. And if you go back here, we can see that the label is just after the radio button. So we can just type plus label. So this will select the next label, and here we'll just add the styles for the selected label. So let's type background and let's set the background color to 023047. Let's set the color of the text to white, and let's set the font weight to bold. And now we can see that this is selected and we have a different styling. Now if you select this one, we have a different styling for this. So it is working all right. Right now let's style this text area. So let's go back and let's type container text area. And for the text area, let's set the padding to 16 pixels. And let's set the font size to 20 pixels. And let's set the height of the element to 140 pixels. Here we can see we have the option of resizing the text area. So let's disable that. I just type resize and let's set it to none. And now we are not able to resize. And let's also add some line height. So let's type line height and let's set the line height to 1.7, and that looks all right. Right now let's set a border. So I'll just type border and I'll just set it to 1 pixel solid 023047. Right now let's style this translate button. So let's go back and let's type container button, and let's set the padding to 8 pixels, and let's set the font size to 20 pixels, and let's remove the border, and we'll also set the background color to E63946, and let's set the color of the text to white, and we'll also set the cursor to pointer. Right now let's style this translated text. So for that we have this division with the class of translation. So let's type translation, and for this we will set the padding to 12 pixels top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right. And let's set a background color of EDF2F4, and let's set a margin top. So let's set margin top, and let's set it to 20 pixels, and let's set the font size to 20 pixels, and for this also let's set the line height to 1.7, and let's set the height of the element to 140 pixels. Right now let's go ahead and set the overflow Y to scroll. So let's tap overflow Y, and let's set it to scroll so that if we have more text, then we'll be able to scroll down. Right now let's style this copy button, and we need to bring it to this top right corner, and we need to position it relative to this translation division. So for that let's go back, and here for the translation division let's set the position to relative, and let's target the copy button. So let's tap translation, copy BTN, and here let's tap position absolute, and if we scroll up, here we can see we have already added this style for this copy button. So I'll just cut this from here, and I'll just delete this, and let's scroll down, and let's paste it over here. Right now let's set the top position of this copy button to 12 pixels, and let's set the right position to 12 pixels as well, and let's set the opacity of the element to 0.7, and we'll set the cursor to pointer, and now we can see that it is styled correctly. Right now let's go ahead and style this notification. So let's go back, and for that we have this division with the class name of notification. So let's type notification, and we'll set the position to fixed, and we will set the bottom position to 0, and we'll set the left position to 50%, and now we can see it starts from the 50% mark. So we have to type transform translate x negative 50%, and now we can see it is exactly in the center. Right now let's go ahead and add a background color, and let's set it to 023047, and let's set the color of the text to white, and let's also add some padding. So I'll just type padding, and let's set it to 12 pixels top and bottom and 24 pixels left and right, and let's set a border radius of 30 pixels. And now we need to display this only when we click on this copy button. So we will add a class called active when we want it to be displayed. So by default we will bring this notification to the bottom of the screen. So here I'll just change this to translate, and for the X value I'll just type negative 50%, and for the Y value I'll just type 100 pixels, so it will be moved outside the screen. Now when we have the active class we will bring it up, and we'll also have a smooth transition. So I'll just type transition, and I'll just set it to all 400 milliseconds ease. And now let's go ahead and type notification.active. So when we have the active class for the notification, I'll just copy this from here, and let's paste it over here, and I'll just change this Y value to negative 30 pixels, so it will be inside our viewport. So let's go back to the app.jsx file, and here let's also add a class called active. And now we can see that the notification is being displayed, and if I remove the class active, it disappears. Now here we will also have a space for displaying the error message. So for example, if the user did not type any message over here, and if they clicked on this translate button, then we should have some error message displayed over here. So for that, let's go back, and let's go just below the text area, and here let's create a division, and let's give it a class of error, and here I'll just type error message. We'll change the text later. So let's go back, and let's go to the CSS file, and here let's add some styles. So I'll just type error, and I'll just set the color of the text to red, and this is how the error message looks, and I think that looks alright. So with that we have completed designing the UI. Right now that we are done with the UI of our app, let's go ahead and add the functionality. Now before integrating the OpenAI API into our app, let's go ahead and add some basic functionality. So let's go back to the code, and the first thing we will do is we will collect the data that we have over here. So we need to get the data of the text area and also the selected radio button over here. So for that, what we will do is we will create a state. So here in this app.jsx file, let's go ahead and create a state. So I'll just type const, and we will just name it form data. And to set that, we'll create a function called setFormData, and we'll just set it equal to use state. And here we can see it has automatically imported this use state from here. If it doesn't work for you, you can just go ahead and add this code. Right now, by default, we will have an object over here, and we need to have the Hindi language selected by default. So let's type language, and I'll just set it equal to Hindi. And then for the message, which is this text area right here, so here we can see we have this name of message. So here let's type message, and by default we will set the message to blank. Now the first thing we will do is we will select the default language. So by default we need to set the Hindi language as checked or selected. For that, you have to go into the input field and you have to type default checked, and you have to set it equal to this form data. So let's type curly braces, form data dot language. And now if you go back here, we can see that Hindi language is selected by default, and we can go ahead and select another language if you want. Right now, let's go ahead and add an onChange event listener over here for the input fields. So whenever we change these selections, we need to update this state over here. So for that, let's go ahead and type onChange, and for this we'll create a function called handle input change. And I'll just go ahead and copy this and paste it for all the other input fields. So here we have the next input field, and then we have the third one, and we need to do that for the text area as well. So I'll just type onChange handle input change. Right now, let's create this function. So here let's type const handle input change. Now here in this function we get some data, so I'll just call it E. You can call this anything you want. And here what we're going to do is we're going to set this form data. So let's type set form data. Now here let's type square brackets E dot target dot name, and let's type colon E dot target dot value, and we need to add this inside curly braces. Now what this does is that it will look for the name attribute inside the target. So if you are selecting this input field, it will select this name attribute, which is language, and it will set it to the value of that element over here. And if you're making changes in the text area, it will take a look at the name attribute, which is message, and it will add the value inside the message. So in this way, the language and the message fields will be set. Now here I'll just go ahead and console.log, and let's type form data. Right now, let's go back to our website, and let's open the console. And let's go ahead and type something over here. So here we can see that when we type, we have the message set to this value right here. But here we can see that the language has not changed over here. That's because here we can see that we are resetting the values over here. So what we need to do is we need to keep all the previous values. So let's type form data, comma, and this will keep all the previous values, and it will also store the new values. So let's go back and let's try it, and let's type something over here. And here we can see that we now have the language and also the message. Let's go ahead and try to change this radio buttons. And here we can see for the radio buttons we have some problems. So let's go back and let's scroll down. Now here for the radio buttons we need to have an attribute called value. So let's type value, and for this one I'll just set the value to Hindi, and then for the second one let's set the value to Spanish, and for the third one let's set the value to Japanese. So if you scroll up here, we can see that we are setting the value of the target element. Right now let's go back and let's select this. And here we can see that the values of the language are changing. And if you type something over here in the message, here we can see that it is changing as well. So it is working all right. Now let's go ahead and write the code to display this error message over here. So this error message should be displayed only when we don't have any message in the text area. So let's go ahead and create a state for that. Let's type const error set error equals use state, and by default we will set it to blank. Now let's go ahead and create another event listener for the form submit. So when we click on this translate button, we need to have this error message displayed if this text area is blank. So let's go ahead and for the form element, let's tap on submit, and we'll create a function called handle on submit. Let's create the function over here. Just tap const handle on submit. Now this will also give us some values, so let's call that e. And the first thing we need to do is we need to prevent the default behavior of the browser. So let's type e.prevent default. And now let's go ahead and see whether the text area is blank. So for that, let's add an if condition, and let's type exclamation form data dot message. So this will check whether the message is empty or not, and if it is empty, then we will set the error to some text. So let's type set error, and here let's type please enter the message, and then I'll just return from this function. And if the text area is not blank, then we need to translate. So I'll just type translate, and we also need to create this function. So I'll just create the function over here. I'll just type const translate, and I'll just leave it blank for now. Right now let's scroll down, and here we can see that the error is right here. Now we need to display the error only if there is an error. So for that, let's go ahead and add this inside a condition. So let's type curly braces, and here let's type error ampersand ampersand. So what this will do is if we have some kind of error, then this code will be executed. So we will have this division. And if you don't have any errors, then we won't have this division. So now let's go back. And now we can see we don't have the error. And now if I click on translate, now we can see that the error message is displayed. Let's go ahead and add the error message over here as well. So let's add curly braces, and let's type error. And now we can see that the error message is displayed over here. And now when we start typing something over here, this error message should disappear. So for that, let's go back. And here, when we handle the input change, here we need to set the error to blank. So let's type set error blank. Right now, let's go back. And now if we start typing something over here, the error message disappears. And if you don't have any text over here, and if I click on translate, we have the error message. And if we have some text, and if I click on translate, we don't have any problem. Right now, let's go ahead and code the functionality of this copy button. So when we click on this copy button, we need to have this text copied to the clipboard, and we also need to display the notification. So for that, let's go back, and let's go ahead and create a state for that. Let's type const, and we'll create a state for showing the notification. So let's type show notification, and set show notification equals use state, and by default we'll set it to false. Right now, let's scroll down and go to the copy button. Here we have the copy button. Let's go ahead and add an on click, and we'll create a function called handle copy. So let's go ahead and create the function over here. Here let's type const handle copy. Now for copying to the clipboard, you have to type navigator dot clipboard dot write text, and here we need to add the text. So for now, let's create a state for that. Let's type const, and we'll just call it translation, and let's type set translation equals use state, and by default we'll set it to blank. Right, let's scroll down, and here let's type translation. So whatever text we have inside translation will be copied to the clipboard. Now this will return to us a promise, so let's tap dot then. Now once the text is copied, we'll just display the notification. So here I'll just create a function for that. I'll just tap display notification. And let's also add a catch. So if we have some problems copying the text, I'll just display that in the console. So I'll just type console dot error failed to copy, and let's add the error over here. Right now let's create this function. So I'll just tap const display notification, and the first thing we need to do is we need to set the show notification to true. So let's use set show notification. So just tap set show notification true, and we will display the notification for 3 seconds. So let's create a set timeout, and for the timeout let's tap 3000, which is 3 seconds, and here I'll just tap set show notification. I'll just set it to false. So after 3 seconds the notification should disappear. Now if you go back to the CSS, here we can see for the notification we are adding a class called active. So when we have the active class, the notification will be displayed. So for that, let's go back to the JSX file, and let's go to the notification, and here we have the notification. So what we will do is we will dynamically add and remove the active class over here. So let's go ahead and turn this into backticks, and let's add all of this inside curly braces. Right now let's go ahead and type $symbol curly braces, and let's add some JavaScript code over here. So let's tap show notification. So this will check whether this show notification state is true or false, and if it is true, so let's add a question mark, and if it is true, let's add a class of active. So I'll just add it inside double quotes, and if it is false, then we'll just leave it blank. So what this will do is if we have the show notification set to true, then the active class will be added, and if it is set to false, then the active class will be removed, and we already have this notification class by default. Right now let's go back, and let's click on this copy button, and now we can see that the notification is being displayed, and after 3 seconds it goes away. And let's go ahead and add some text to the translation. So here let's type text to copy, and let's go ahead and click on this copy button, and now let's go ahead and paste it over here, and let's see whether the text was copied. So let's paste it over here, and we can see that the text was indeed copied. Right, so with that we have completed writing the basic functionality of this app. Now let's go ahead and add the OpenAI API to add the translation functionality. Now the first thing you need to do is go to platform.openai.com, and if you don't have an account, just go ahead and create a free account and log into the account. And once you log in, you can see this page right here, and here we have a lot of examples, and if I click on examples, we have a lot more examples over here. And here we have this example of grammar correction, we have text to command, and a lot of these things over here. And here we can see we also have this English to other language translation. So let's click on this, and here we can see this is how it works. We can write this prompt, translate this into, and you can add the language over here, and then you can add the text that you want to translate. And here we can see that this is how the response is gonna be, and here we have the code that we can just copy. So let's go ahead and copy this code from here, and if you want to try this, you can just go ahead and click on open in playground, and you can try these prompts over here. Alright, let's go back to our code, and we need to copy the code over here. So let's go ahead and paste the code right here, and we need to make some changes over here. So let's go ahead and first of all import the configuration and OpenAI API from OpenAI. So I'll just delete this from here. I'll just use the import statement over here. So let's delete this, and before using this we need to also install the OpenAI package. So for that, let's go ahead and open the terminal, and I'll just stop the server by pressing Ctrl+C, and let's go ahead and install OpenAI. So let's tap npm I OpenAI, and we'll also install a package for a spinner animation while the translation is being done. So let's type React spinners, and let's press enter. And here we can see that the packages have been installed. So let's go ahead and type import, and we need to import configuration and OpenAI API from OpenAI. So let's type configuration and OpenAI API from OpenAI. Right now, the next thing we will do is we'll copy all of this code inside our translate function right here. So let's go ahead and copy all of this from here. I'll just cut it from here and I'll just paste it inside this translate function. And since we have await over here, we need to turn this into an async function. So here let's type async. Right now, the next thing we need to do is we need to get an OpenAI API key, and we need to add it over here. So for that, let's go back to the OpenAI website, and you need to click on your username, and you need to click on view API keys. And here we can see we have the API keys listed over here. You can just go ahead and create a new one. So let's click on create new secret key, and you can just go ahead and copy this key from here. And now let's go back and let's paste it over here. So this is our API key. Now this API key is a secret, so we need to add it somewhere else. So for that, we need to create an environment variable. So let's go to the root of our project and let's create a new file, and we need to call it .env. And here we need to add some environment variables. So let's type vite underscore, and I'll just call it OpenAI key, and let's type equals, and let's copy this key from here and let's paste it over here. Now we can go ahead and use this API key from here. So here, to use that, you have to type import.meta.env the name. So let's type vite underscore OpenAI underscore key. Now we need to type import meta env over here. That's because we are using vite to create this React app. If you are using create React app, then you can go ahead and type process.env the API key. And since we are using vite to create the React app, we also have to type vite in front of the variable name. Right now, let's go ahead and close this. And let's go ahead and write the functionality for the translation. So let's scroll down, and we need to change this prompt. So we need to type translate this into, and we need to add our language over here. So let's delete all of this from here, and let's type translate this into. And to access this language, we need to access the form data. So what we will do is here I'll just type const, and I'll just extract the values from our form data. So I'll just type language and message. So this will be extracted from form data. Now let's go ahead and use these two variables over here. So let's type translate this into, and I'll just change this into backticks so that we can use variables. So let's type $symbol curly braces language, and let's type colon, and then we need to add the message over here. So let's type $symbol curly braces message. So this is going to be our prompt. Translate this into the language, and then we have the message. Right now, let's go ahead and console.log the response that we get. So let's type console.log response. So here we can see we are storing the response inside this response variable. Right now, let's go back to our website and let's see whether it works. So let's open the console, and let's type something over here. So I'll just type how are you, and let's press translate. And now we can see we have this response, and let's open this. And in that we have the data, and let's open the data. And in the data we have choices, and let's open choices. And in choices we have the first index, and in that we have the translation. And here we can see we have the Hindi translation. So we need to get this value. So let's go back, and let's console.log the value. So let's type response.data.choices, and let's access the first item .text. So here we can see we have the text over here, and in that we have the translation. And we'll also remove this console log for these values over here. So I'll just delete this line of code from here. Right now, let's go back and let's test it out. So let's type how are you, and let's press translate. And now we can see we have this translated text, but we also have some blank space at the top. So for that, let's go back, and here we can just type .trim. And now if you go back and if I try it once again, now we can see we don't have any extra spaces and we have the correct translated text over here. Now we need to display this text inside this division. So for that, let's go back. Now instead of console.logging it, I'll just store it inside a variable. So I'll just create a variable called translated text, and I'll just set it equal to this code. Now we need to set this translated text to this state translation. So I'll just set the default to blank, and let's scroll down, and here let's type set translation, and here let's type translated text. And now let's scroll down, and here for this division for the translated text, I'll just display the translation over here. So I'll just type curly braces, and let's type translation. So let's go back to our website, and let's type how are you, and let's press translate. And now we can see that the translation is displayed over here, and if I click on copy text and if I paste it over here, we can see that it is working all right. Now let's go ahead and add a spinner animation when the translation is being done. So let's go back, and let's import BeatLoader from the package that we installed called React Spinners. So let's type import BeatLoader from React Spinners, and let's scroll down, and here let's add a condition. Here we need to check whether the translation is being done. So let's create a new state for that. So let's create a state called is loading. Set is loading equals use state, and let's set it to false by default. Now what we need to do is we need to set the is loading to true when we click on the translate button. So let's scroll down, and here in the handle on submit, we are writing the code for the translate button. So here before the translate function is called, let's type set is loading to true. And here for the translation, when the translation is done, we need to set it to false. So here let's type set is loading to false. Right now let's scroll down, and let's add the animation when the loading is true. So here let's type is loading, and if it is true, then we need to display the BeatLoader animation. So let's type BeatLoader, and if it is false, then we need to display the translation. And here we can add some more options over here. So we can add the size. So I'll just set the size to 12, and we can also add the color. So I'll just set the color to red. Right now let's go back to our app, and let's see whether everything works all right. So let's type what is your name, and let's click on translate, and here we can see we have the animation, and after that we have the translated text displayed over here, and we can go ahead and copy it and paste it anywhere we want. Now let's go ahead and test it for other languages. So let's click on Spanish, and let's click on translate, and here we can see we have the translation for what is your name in Spanish, and we can also check Japanese. Let's click on translate, and here we have the translation in Japanese. Let's go ahead and quickly check whether this is correct. So I'll just copy this from here, and I'll just open Google Translate. So here in Google Translate, I'll just select detect language, and let's paste it over here. And here we can see it says what is your name, so the translation is correct. So that's basically how you can create this translation app using OpenAI. Now in the same way, you can go ahead and add other languages over here. Now if you have a lot of languages, you can just add them inside a drop down. Right, so that's basically how you can create a translation app using React and OpenAI. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.